Hello, my name is Jackie Morreale, and I am the host of Wisdom for Wannabes, a new podcast series that seeks to discover wise words in business, beauty, and betterment. Today's focus is the topic of beauty by way of the creation of art. I have the pleasure to introduce our featured guest today, fine artist, art educator, all around amazing human being, Keith Gamache. Welcome to Wisdom for Wannabes, Mr. Gamache.
Thank you for having me, Jackie. And now, after
Absolutely.
almost 30 years, you can also call me Keith if you're comfortable doing
Thank
so.
you. I'm really going to have to pinch myself to call you Keith, but I will try. As Keith, Mr. Gamache mentioned, I have had the pleasure of knowing you now since 1998. You taught me how to paint with oils when I was a student in your high school art class in Long Island, New York. I'm eternally grateful for this knowledge and for your patience and for the countless other students that you have brought art into their lives. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much
You're
for everything
welcome.
that you do every day.
And
Absolutely.
for all the students like yourself who really, truly cared about what they were making and listened to me, and now all these years later, thinking to invite me to your show, this podcast that you're doing, I appreciate it as well.
Absolutely. I really think that teachers are the foundation for everything in our life. Not only are you an art educator for almost 32 years, Keith Gamache is an American artist whose work has been featured and lauded in numerous solo and group exhibitions in the tri-state area and beyond since 1998. Keith's unique creative processes draws inspiration from diverse influences, from the folk art charm of Pennsylvania Dutch hex signs to the precision of early modernists like Mondrian, to the boldness of contemporary text-based painters like Robert Indiana. Keith Gamache's work was featured in the 2022 Long Island Biennial at the Heckscher Museum of Art. His exhibition history includes solo shows such as Dot to Dot in 1999 at the Julian Scott Memorial Gallery in Vermont. What you see is what you get is what you see from 2003 at Molloy College Art Gallery in New York. And one of my favorites, because I was there to witness the portraits and photography every day, A Beard Grows in Brooklyn from 2005 in Long Island City in New York. Learn more about Keith Gamache and his art at keithgamache.com.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's crazy that we go back 30 years. I'm going to start with some real basic questions. What is your full name? Where are you from? And where do you live and work now?
I'm Keith Gamache. I'm originally from Massachusetts. When I first started teaching, occasionally still had my accent. Usually came out when I was a little frustrated or pressed for time. When students came in one time looking for something to color with for one of their lab reports, I turned and said, "There's a box of markers on the windowsill," and every head in the room turned because they had never heard me talk like that before. So I'm originally from Massachusetts, a very small town, Berkeley. Then I came to New York to go to NYU for undergrad. I've been in New York ever since, living in lots of different places. But throughout that whole time, I've been teaching Southside. So I started teaching at Southside in 1994 and 95.
Amazing. So you've done the whole New York City, boroughs, Long Island tour.
For the longest time, I had a studio in Long Island City, Queens.
Yes.
That was from 99 until 2010. When we moved out to our current home, we bought this property because there's a barn in the back of the property, which is pretty unique for this part of Nassau County. It was supposed to be my studio.
Yes.
It's like, we're buying the house so that that's my studio.
Amazing.
There were a lot of bikes in there and a lot of storage.
No.
But my power tools are out there. I'll do
Okay.
framing, some preliminary stuff. But for the most part, I do my painting at different spots inside the house.
Where
I
there's
also
air
feel
conditioning, heat, right? Those kind of
that,
things.
and also just being closer to the family.
Yes.
So then I'm not detached and where's dad? Oh, he's out in the barn. No, I'm here in the house. I can wash my brush and help you
Yes.
whatever you need to do.
Exactly. Isn't that great? Wow, you live in Long Island and you have a barn. That's amazing. At first, I thought you meant there was a barn in Long Island City, and I was going to say that I've never heard of anything, although
No.
I know people do have chickens in Brooklyn. So I know that where there's a will, there's a way to have a farm. So tell us, what do you do and what is your passion?
I'm a high school art teacher. I've been teaching art at Southside High School for 32 years in a lot of different classes. When you were there, I was mostly teaching painting and drawing, advanced painting and drawing, IB art. Then with some changes in faculty in the department growing, I started to teach sculpture and ceramics. And that actually became the bulk of my teaching for the longest time, along with IB art. 8 years ago, I started teaching some computer programming. The school started a computer science program. They weren't going to hire somebody from the outside. The principal asked if there were any volunteers, and I raised my hand saying, well, I liked computer programming, but I haven't done any since my freshman and sophomore year of high school. But if you want it to be a more creative approach and you want it to be more like my art teaching than something else, I was somewhat hoping he would go, Keith, thanks for volunteering.
Yeah, how'd
We'll
that
give this
go?
to somebody else. But it
Yeah,
became more
right.
like a tag, you're it. So I
Exactly.
found myself learning a lot of new material, even taught AP Computer Science the last 2 years, but now with some more changes to our art program, and they have hired somebody with an actual computer science background now. I am full-time art teacher again,
Good for
teaching
you.
painting and drawing and IB art. So
Good for
it's
you.
coming full circle
Full
now, which
circle.
is really fun.
I love that they took your volunteering for that gig in computer science, because I really think that applying the skills that you have, because when I think about what do you do, I think that you are a fine artist. So we were just so lucky to have a few hours of your day to impart that wisdom on us, because the education that you provided as a fine artist is amazing, and to put that level of creativity towards solving problems in terms of computer science and the opportunities that are there is an incredible opportunity for the kids. Did anybody develop an app based on your class that has gone, to make billions of dollars at this point?
No big apps made yet. I've taught some brilliant kids. One of my biggest wishes is the very first group that I taught in computer science. I wish I could teach them again, knowing what I learned over those years. A couple of those kids, I just want to say thank you for not making me feel dumb in front of the other kids, because they were definitely more advanced and more sophisticated than me. But their learning skills and their human skills were so good that they still knew that I had things to offer. So even though they might have known the syntax better than me, in some cases, even the logic, when they were running into problems or needed just help with ideas or developing things, they would still come to me. And it's beautiful working and teaching in an environment like that, where I didn't feel like I had to be the smartest person in the room. They, at only like 16, 17 years old, were also mature enough to realize that I cared about them and their learning
They're
and could
learning.
still offer stuff for them. The last 8 years of working in computer science was a lot of fun for me. When you're in the same building too for so long, having different experiences within that place helps
Help.
to keep learning fresh and your enthusiasm fresh, and also getting to teach different kind of types of students too.
Yes.
So it was positive.
Well, it almost sounds like you've really built like a multifaceted team, right? If you're coming in with the creative genius that you have, and then you have, look, these kids are 16, 17 years old. They grew up with technology. So it's just natural for them to know coding languages and logic, right? What an interesting thing to take somebody with a creative skill set and surround you with this think tank of tech thinkers, and just to put that together sounds like a dream team,
Yeah.
actually.
And I really appreciate the administration too for entrusting me and supporting me and getting me the training that I did need to do it. A lot of times at swim practice, I was up in the bleachers with my laptop going through lessons over and over again, trying to master that before I would be in there delivering it to the students.
You are so humble, Mr. Gamache. I'm going to keep calling you Mr. Gamache because
Okay.
that's what you'll always be to me. I'm sure that they got a lot out of it, and I think that you can teach anything. So,
Thank you.
yes, you have so many things that you do, but what is your passion? If you could do just one thing and be very happy with it all day long, what would that
I
be?
like to say I like making stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I feel more comfortable saying that than painting or sculpting.
Yes.
Part of that is the appreciation and respect that I have for what I really consider to be painterly painters. Even when I first started painting, so saying like late high school into early college, when I thought I was painting, I was really just coloring in drawings that I would make. I had a
Mhm.
drawing background. I was good at drawing. And it wasn't until when I went off to work on my MFA and did my first residency at Vermont Studio Center, and I was really surrounded by painters, landscape painters and portrait painters. I would visit their studios and I would see paintings were these living things that had layers of paint. The artist would apply paint and then sometimes wipe it away because it wasn't good. They wouldn't draft everything precisely and then color
Lies.
it in. There are so many variations too in painters' processes that I learned so much just from watching and seeing and witnessing that. So I consider my passion is making.
Mm-hmm.
I do work primarily, as you mentioned, on masonite pegboard.
Yes.
I work largely with vinyl acrylic paints, which I discovered along the way. Pearl paint when it still existed. I actually went to the pearl paint that was behind the pearl paint store because they had these vinyl acrylic paints that were designed for use in the theater.
Mm.
The thing about these paints is it's a very matte finish, but it's
Yes.
also highly durable. That's why it was used for stages because it wouldn't have the reflectivity, but it could also get scratched without showing those scratches. I liked the velvety finish of it, and I started working with that and building it up in layers. I just started to make these patterns, painting circles around the holes, connecting the holes together by lines, different types of patterns for years. That's the way it stayed. And then I started to get more involved with text, imagery, thinking of them almost like counted cross stitch. Crafts have always been a big influence on my work as well. So my passion is making things.
How long have you been making things?
I've been making things since I was very small, thanks to mom and dad. And you mentioned teachers being so important, and our parents are our first teachers. So
Teachers.
my mother was a trained seamstress, crocheted and knitted and sewed things when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
In the 70s, we didn't have all the stuff that we have now to entertain ourselves. Sometimes we barely had TV. Like I actually remember waking up at 5:30 in the morning. When I turned on the TV, it would either be static or colored bars. There would be the American flag on a pole, the Star Spangled Banner would play, and then the first program would come on. I grew up in a rural area with a lot of boredom. I think boredom is a gift, actually, that we have no patience for today.
I was going to say, well, what is that for kids now? They're bored while
Yeah.
they're scrolling, and there's just constant entertainment, but it's still boring, right? It's not the boring that you're, talking about where there's no TV and you're in a rural setting and it's beautiful, but maybe you don't appreciate it at that point because we
Yeah.
don't have patience, right? And now
So
we're just
my mom
bombarded
was
by
home with
noise.
us, and it's like, okay, you're bored. Well, so she taught me how to knit. She taught me how to sew, doing crafts. My dad was a trained electrician, but never got his license. Whenever he would need to learn a new skill, he would go and help a contractor in the neighborhood. He would learn how to build something while he was doing the electrical work for him. Then my dad taught me how to build things. I was a Cub Scout growing up. One of my favorite things every year was making Pinewood Derby cars. And my dad taught me how to sand everything meticulously and sort of coarse grit, finer grit, finer grit. My cars have like 7 layers of spray paint on them.
Yarns, cars. I'm just thinking about your pegboards. There's even a sort of rhythm that's similar, different medium, different purpose. That's so interesting. I didn't know that you had that family background. Even
Yeah.
something that you could whip stitch right on the sides of some sort of
Sure.
a craft, embellishment, appliques. I'm seeing where maybe some of the connect the dots.
So, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned
inspirations
whips.
from.
So before the pegboards, I had been working with corrugated cardboard, and I was actually taking yarn and stringing it through the corrugations. I would cut out negative space shapes off the top layer and peel that away so you could see the lines
See.
of yarn underneath it.
Cool.
So I was working with yarn and cardboard, and I began using the pegboard as a way to mount the cardboard onto the pegboard because it was sturdier, and then fasten that onto the wall. I chose the pegboard itself because it also had the holes in it so you could see the wall through the pegboard. And that interaction of wall with painting was important to me. I do like objects, and I think of my paintings very much as being objects. There are
Yes.
these sculptural qualities that I'm interested in. That's how the pegboards started. At the end of a summer residency, I had 3 more days left, but I finished all the grand stuff I was going to make. I had this batch of pegboard left. I cut them into these 6-inch squares, and I just started freely and spontaneously painting, which free and spontaneous and art making for me don't always go hand in hand.
But usually leads to some really amazing work, right?
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I still have some of those kicking around in different areas. Whenever I find myself getting too tight or rigid or predictable, I'll run off to the studio and find where I have those cobbled away and be like, time to get messy again, or a little more playful again, and let things happen.
I love the word improvisational. I saw that people have talked about your work as playful, improvisational. I love that. That's so interesting that when you start to see it feeling too predictable, that you'll throw something in there from the past to sort of change direction and see where it goes.
Yeah. Another thing I'll do, I use hand sanders to sand some of my surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is to get some qualities that I don't feel comfortable with. I love painterly paintings, but when I make painterly marks myself, I start to cringe and stuff. But the sanding and layering colors and then doing that, I can control how much I sand. Like I'll relayer and sand again. And I'm comfortable with that. It does get to be a certain amount of unpredictability, but then also I can control and play around with that as well.
So you're painting the vinyl acrylic onto the pegboards. You're sometimes, depending on the piece, focusing on the holes and the 3D dimension of that. Then you're sanding after painting. So you have this matte paint that's filling the space, and then you're sanding off layers of that to reveal layers that are underneath.
Yeah, somewhat like that history. And again, so that's kind of this thing when I say these painterly painters. I start, first it's an idea, then a lot of times I'll map it out on graph paper or dot grid paper. There's that sketch, and that is a starting point. But once it gets on the board itself, it's not just follow the directions. It's not like a paint by number. It is at that point more organic. Because once you get the scale shift, all of a sudden it gets to be larger. Once the colors are there, colors are so much about relationships, more playful and intuitive at that point.
How many classes do you teach during the school day?
It'll be 5 classes.
There is something to sharing and talking all the time that it takes a lot of energy to do.
Mentioning that made me think about the experience that I had at the Long Island Children's Museum, which the pieces behind me were from. Part of that show was also a residency at the museum 1 week, Monday to Friday.
Okay.
And it was 2 workshops a day.
Oof. Yeah.
Of kids and their parents coming to the museum. The first day was tons of fun. And after that, I started to think, this is what Broadway performers must feel like.
Yeah.
I even started to have more respect for Broadway performers. I had to look at it. I'm doing the same thing twice a day. But for these kids and their parents coming in, this is their one performance. My art classroom, every day is different. Like we're moving on. There are different stages of the project.
Do you know how many students you've had over 32 years? I'm just curious.
I once tried to figure it out.
Is it like
but then I gave up
100,000?
because you could just do rudimentary math and just go, well, I have about 100 kids, multiply that by 30, but there were some students I taught all 4 years. So that's not a new student. I taught virtually all students who took painting and drawing at least 2 out of the 4 years that they were at the school. So it gets to be tricky. But I do know it's definitely thousands.
At least. Yes, you have the same kid from 9th grade to 12th grade, maybe. Because I think I had you at least 2 or 3 times, which was amazing. but you're really getting a kid at a different, unique stage in their life. So in
Yeah.
a way, they kind of are different, especially starting high school at 9th grade to a young adult who's graduating and knows that they want to go into arts or knows that they want to do computer science or whatever, a different
Yeah.
person.
I've spent my whole career teaching 14 to 18-year-olds.
Yes.
14 to 18-year-olds in 2025 are different than the 14 to 18-year-olds in 1995, mostly because of technology. That's been a funny thing to reflect upon and just to keep reminding myself of. It's also what helps to keep it fresh too, outside of the fact that everyone is an individual. While there might be some universal things that teenagers go through from when you were in school to today, there are a lot of universal feelings. Growing up, starting to push away from home and parents and friends and going off to college and those fears and those anxieties. And some of that is very consistent and predictable, but with differences in technology, media, expectations, it really is a remarkably different landscape in which I'm teaching as well.
Interesting. Do you feel that technology is improving since you have your finger on the pulse of the teenage student body in New York, at least as a population?
So New York, along with another number of other states, have now at the highest levels of government banned cell phones and personal devices in schools. I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. Our school's policy has been off and away,
Yes.
but there is also some flexibility with that. Like a Dell Chromebook takes horrible pictures. So to have students document their work, I would always let them use their own personal phone
or as a reference if you need
take
something,
looking
if
at
you're
references.
painting.
Even though I couldn't stand it. I'm like, how can you look at that little picture on your little phone? I was like, please let me print out a full 8.5 by
What do you
11.
mean print? I'm good. I'll just.
Yeah, no, Mr. Moss, I'm fine. It's at some points I accept that too, because that is, I think, a generational difference. If they're comfortable doing it that way, why should I impose my antiquated paper ways?
Yeah, dinosaur age way of doing things. There was nothing like a computer in your pocket that could take the most amazing pictures and could search anything. The access to technology is very different.
Yeah, your IB sketchbook was probably filled with black and white photocopies. We might have just gotten a color copier printer in the room, but ink and toner was so expensive. All of those things are different. And that's by and large how I try to treat these changes that have happened. I try to not put them in competition against each other to be like, this one is better than that one. There are pros and cons to things.
Exactly.
The ease of use is both awesome and scary. There are things that you learn when you have to search for something. When you're able to just get it, well, that takes out, I don't want to say some of the fun, because when you're doing research and digging through stuff to get the right sources, it's time consuming. I don't think that the technology is inherently good or bad, but we do have to figure out how to use it effectively. So in my school last year, I started working on the AI committee because that's something that we're grappling with. I think progress is important. There's a lot that I'm skeptical of that I don't like, but as an artist too, the analogy I make is once upon a time, people are like, oh no, the camera's bad. It's going to take away creativity. And it didn't take away creativity. It changed the way people painted.
Agree.
And then with computers, oh no, Photoshop is bad. It allows, people to cheat. No, it changed the way people work. I feel the same thing is going to happen with AI. There's going to be bad AI use, but then there'll also be some extremely clever and ingenious things done. And it will speed up creativity for some people. It'll be like a collaborator. But I think as long as artists remember still that they're the human and they're in charge, and they can determine how much they want to give over control to or maintain. Those, I think, are individual questions for artists and people to answer. I do think as an educator, schools do have a responsibility to start to help guide students through using it in appropriate ways, because it's not going to go away.
I think it's absolutely only going to get bigger and stronger and more used throughout our daily lives. The nice thing, I think, as an artist who's picked up a pen or a pencil or a paintbrush is that taking it down to those basic elements where you're just making marks on paper, however you want to make them, whatever direction, abstract, realist, whatever. It's a way of expressing yourself it's not anti-technology, but it just brings you back to your roots somehow. So even if you're using the various AI apps to get inspiration or some way to enhance what you're doing as an artist, I think, like you said, you're in charge and you have to take it back to your roots. And I like to get my hands dirty and feel that there is a difference between what you're getting out of an AI platform to what you're creating
I
as a
think
fine
those
artist.
tactile qualities are really important and for a lot of people, and to not lose that. My work lends itself very well to digital applications. In Illustrator, I made grids with circles and I could click on them and change the colors of them. I started working that way for a little bit because it made sense. It didn't last that long because I didn't enjoy working that way. Clicking and filling and changing colors on a screen and with a computer is a lot different than dipping the paint in and doing this. The smell of the materials too. There are a lot of parts of making and experiencing art beyond just what you see that's a part of the creator's motivation and what they get out of the process of making art.
For me, if I'm the observer and I'm trying to look at someone's art, I'm looking for those imperfections. I want to see the human behind the art. That's what I love. I do use Photoshop. I do use Illustrator, InDesign, Adobe programs, and I think they're great. But for the sake of creating art, yes, I don't want to just fill my circle in different colors that I've already grabbed swatches of. I want to see the depth of that stroke. I recently went to the Norton Museum here in West Palm Beach and just got addicted to the older stuff, the Impressionists. I saw Monet after not seeing one for many years, and it just took my breath away. The human behind it, who could barely see, who's trying to interpret water lilies in his backyard, and the chunkiness of the paint and how it all comes together to one breathtaking composition.
Yeah. You had asked me about Mondrian earlier.
Yes.
And my initial investigations into Mondrian actually were over 20 years ago. It was very superficial and based largely on reproductions that I had seen, and also very much visual. But then after seeing paintings in person and in reading and learning more about the process, he really was a painter. It's not like that blue was that blue from the beginning. That blue might have changed blueness several times as he was making that painting to get that right and perfect for him at that time.
Can you imagine Mondrian compared to Illustrator, a bunch of vector squares and lines that you can just thicken the stroke or you can change the blue color just with one click?
Yeah.
And here's an artist who's formulating these perfect lines and perfect color from one side to the other. The skill set to create the geometric work that I think we're both describing, who knows, maybe inspired some of this completely simplified, perfected version of this in some of those Adobe programs.
And even as you're saying that, you think about a designer and their use of the computer, and there is something about the cleanliness and precision of it. But stuff that we never really see is how many times, most likely, did that person shift something the tiniest bit up, down, left, right, or diagonal until it was like, no, that is the spot that needs to be. I think that's one of the things that if you're not a creator yourself, you don't bring that kind of thoughtfulness to when you look at something to know that it didn't happen immediately.
The process is just different, right?
Yeah.
You still have to have the eye. You still have to have the skill set to know what you're going for. It's just different.
I think that's why with a lot of AI stuff, people feel like because it does come out
Yeah,
right there. Like
instantly.
the machine is able to take all this stuff.
Even images, it's crazy, right? You give it a couple little variables and ask it to create it might even be good.
It might even, yeah. Whenever I start to dabble with it and make things, is I try to get it to make what I have
Yes.
pictured in my head. I can never be descriptive enough
To make it the
to
same.
get it right there. But then it might create images where I was just like, wow, that's really neat that happened. I
Think
never
of it
would have
that
thought
way.
of that. So can I use these things to put together? I don't look at that as that much different from all the years before that when a student would come up to me and go like, Mr. Gamache, what should I make?
Do people ask you that every single day? What should I make?
It happens a lot. It's not new. It was happening when you were in school too. Then I would never just say, well, Jackie, make this, because then that's not you, but it would be process of usually question. Well, what did you make the last time? Or let's look at your last 2 or 3 pieces.
I remember you have this Socratic method to your art dialogues where you really are able to get a student to dig deep within to figure out for themselves what they want to do. That's so interesting. What should I do?
And then do they want to continue something that they've been doing, or have you hit the end of the road with that? Do you need something else? It's not just an about face. It's not looking around the room and, ooh, there's a shiny object. Let me do that. But a conscious understanding of, oh, well, I've been doing this for a while. I need something different. Let me shift. Maybe a material remains consistent, a concept that you've been exploring gets to go through it. And I think like if creators use AI in a way to be that collaborator, especially if you are isolated. I'm not there at
To give you
8:30 at
design
night
prompts.
to help
Yeah,
a
exactly.
student. So it being dialogue based and not
Yes.
just accepting, do this, then I think it can be positive.
As a professional who I think I'm creative. I'm going to say I am creative.
You
I've
are
been
creative.
creative.
And you always were.
I miss having you there to say, okay, this is the assignment, these are the parameters, because sometimes giving you parameters kind of makes you be more creative in your thinking and how you fit what you want to create to those parameters. Certainly having a tight timeline always helps as well, at least for me. Like that 90% of creation is happening in the last 10% of time. That's usually my process. It really takes such self-discipline to do that yourself. I think that students don't realize while they're going through the process that it really is a gift that you thought of this design prompt that really pushes them to create something that relevant, beautiful, expresses themselves, all of the above. That when you're kind of faced with a blank paper as an adult who's trying to be creative, maybe you don't know where to start. So having some guidance from somebody who's really open-minded like you and does have the patience to dialogue and figure out what's going on in the creative mind and how you enhance that student and their work is
It
a
also
gift.
makes me chuckle, and I will reveal this to you, that the number of times that I'm in my studio and I'm being my worst student, I chuckle because then I go, if I were teaching me right now, I would be very frustrated with what I'm doing because I'm being too precise or too precious. And what I need to do right now is just relax or stop or do more. Sometimes you get into something, you want it to be a certain way, and it's just not working or might be shutting down. Sometimes
Remind
my art
yourself.
teacher voice comes in and helps to
I was
get
going to say, maybe distance yourself from it for a moment.
In the classroom, it also helps me to sometimes step back and realize my student is just a human being going through the same artistic struggles that you go through. So just be patient and let them have the bad day, which is hard sometimes for a teacher. And as you know, as a parent, it can be hard to see our students and our children have that bad day, but a lot is learned from that.
A bad day in the art room or a bad day in general with other stuff that's happening in their life?
I was speaking about like a bad art day, but that's the other reality to remember. All of my students have lives beyond the 40 minutes that I see them. It could be stress about a test that they're taking the next period, or things that are going on at home. We've talked of patterns before, paying attention to those patterns too, to see if it is a problem or just today somebody needs a day, because sometimes we all need a day.
Well, I can't imagine a better way of doing bad days than creating something. Maybe you'll create your best work in that way. But so I want to ask you some quick fire questions to get to know Keith Gamache even better, because I think we can philosophically talk about art for a very long time.
I feel like this is going to be the part where I fail. Quick fire
Where
questions.
I fail, trying my best to not have it be my worst student day. Anyway, what is your favorite city?
Boston, which is tough in New York.
Everyone in New York's like,
I'm
seriously?
from Massachusetts. I love my Boston sports teams. I love that the first shots of the revolution were fired there. We both run as part of our lives.
Have you done Boston?
I haven't. So right now it's a goal and a dream of mine to actually qualify for.
We're talking marathons. So
yeah,
so your running is marathoning at this point.
I've only done 2.
Okay, amazing.
But I really like them. This past December, I ran a 50-mile race.
That's serious.
So yeah,
that's semi-insane. Like that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah,
good for you. In New York, the 50.
Boston.
In Boston.
I would love.
And fast, qualifier for the marathon fast.
Yeah, but I'm not there yet. I'm hoping that that can be a retirement dream. Running those kinds of miles that you have to put in to do it well is a lot when you're doing family and work. I'm thinking maybe once I retire, I can actually put in the miles to do that safely. As you get older too, like running and keeping off the injuries is an important thing.
Although 50 miles running is a really long time, it's a dream to ultramarathon. That's amazing.
So can I ask you what your favorite city is?
I like Miami. I like the fact that it's like Venice in the tropics. I like the street art. I like hearing Spanish everywhere I go. Salsa music playing. So I like the vibe of it. But New York is very much the same as that for me. I miss the city vibe.
Yeah. I just like cities. I think there's something with me. Like, I love LA.
Who loves it? Maybe, but not.
Well, that's just, I never expected to even like LA, never mind love it. Growing up in Massachusetts, being a Celtics fan, it was just like Lakers, evil.
Yeah. So like the downtown small area or the expansive city of LA that is driving and traffic and smog?
I think I like the expansiveness of it. From an art perspective too, I went out and visited family and friends in LA. You could be an artist almost anywhere in LA. Things are changing in New York now, but when I had my studio in Long Island City, the feeling in general then was to be an artist in New York, you were in Manhattan. And Brooklyn was acceptable.
Brooklyn too, yeah.
Then it was like Queens, you might have well as been on Long Island. Okay, Long Island City is all right. And that's where my studio was. But geographically, very small area.
Agreed.
But LA was just
spread out. And people appreciate art and individuality.
Do you know what my favorite part of quickfire questions is?
Totally not quick at all.
No, the questions are quick, but the answers, it is not quick fire answers. So I accept responsibility for that.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. Favorite book?
Jonathan Kozel's Savage Inequalities as inspiration for me becoming a painter. I will go with A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius by Dave Edgar's. I might laugh at myself if I were to go back and read it now, but at the time that I read it, it just felt really good. I liked it.
Place to create.
My porch, or this ambiguous room that we have in our house that has been the Lego room, the playroom, the exercise room. It's changed a lot of ways. That's where my work table currently is and where I do most of my work.
Artist of all time. It can be you, by the way. You can pick
Definitely
Keith
not
Gamache.
me. It might be Georgia O'Keeffe.
Mm.
She was the first fine artist that I learned about. I learned about her through books when I would go to Walden Books at the mall. When I was in high school, I discovered the book, and I remember reading as much of it as I could and looking at pictures. Back then, bookstores weren't like Barnes & Noble today, where you can sit down in a cushy chair. After 5 minutes, the employees at the store would be like,
Buy it or leave.
teenager, get out of our store. And I had a bookmark that I kept in the book.
That
And
you
the
kept
next
in the book on
Friday
the
when I
shelf?
went to the mall, I'd go back to that point and I made it through the book in that way. It was a Georgia O'Keeffe book, and she's still special to me.
Her work is gorgeous. Do you ever use anything like a watercolor? I don't see you using a whole lot of gradient shading. You're kind of block off colors, right?
I think just aspects, not so much reflected in my work, but I always loved the aspects of magnification
Mm,
in her work, the
yes.
close cropping and
Yes.
things like that. But I loved her story. I think that was the first time that I read about an artist as a story and a human being.
Yes.
Two, not just being attracted to the visual and the imagery, but the fascinating life that she lived. Her independence at that time was extraordinary. The cloud paintings, too, I particularly liked. There's an element of Latinness and patterning now that I'm talking through it that, could possibly be in my work. Yeah, she was an early favorite and remains enduring.
Favorite period of time or style in art history?
That's impossible
I
for me
know,
to answer.
it's tough.
I love ancient art. When I studied art history, especially Egyptian art, Mesopotamian art, I liked the artifacts. I think something about the enduring quality, the mystery of how were those things made. If there is one favorite that just kind of keeps rising to the top, I would even say that, which is funny because it's also mostly architecture and sculpture.
You make art, you make objects, right? I mean, we're talking artifacts, objects.
One of my more recent paintings, too, is I made a scarab painting, which was inspired by this little jade scarab from either the Met or the Brooklyn Museum. I keep coming back to ancient art.
We'll have to talk more about the scarab and the butterflies and the firefly. Favorite gallery or art show?
This one is easy for me.
Good.
All the way at the Pace Gallery in 1994.
Well, that is so specific.
Going to NYU and just walking into galleries. I had Rosalie Goldberg as a professor for a contemporary art class. He taught me how to write. Every week we had to write, I think it was like 3 or 4 reviews of shows that we went to. It forced us to go into galleries. But then she actually read the stuff that we wrote and she would mark it up gloriously with red pen and give it back to us. We had to rewrite what we had written the previous week based on her feedback and write new reviews. She got me going into galleries in a way that I had never done before. So I go into Pace Gallery and I had been there a ton of times before. And all of a sudden I walk in and there are walls where there hadn't been walls before. And every wall is covered top to bottom, left to right, some with just simple, elegant pencil lines, some with layers of ink that look like they could be Italian frescoes of these geometric forms. 2 weeks later, the show was over and it was back to being the Pace Gallery. I had learned about Solowit in a little art history textbook that had a black and white image of one of his cube wall drawings. I was like, this is garbage. That's not art. He writes directions and people follow through on it. And I walked in and I actually experienced it surrounding me. As you can tell from the specificity of my response down to the date, it was...
Yes, it made an impact, huh?
Then when I interviewed to teach at Southside, my demo lesson was inspired by that Solowit experience.
Surprised that you don't do experiential shows. I think that your work could lend itself to that. Just
Maybe
putting
in
it out there.
retirement, I'll fill
Maybe.
whole walls with pegboard and
Maybe.
paint them. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Maybe. Who knows? Or some sort of light around the pegboard. I don't know.
yeah.
I guess we'll have to
Well, I
find
like
out what.
James Turrell, Dan
Yes.
Flavin. Have you ever been out to Dan Flavin's Bridgehampton, part of the Dia
Nope.
Center?
Oh,
It's a
but now
wonderful
I
little
need to
spot.
go. I worked in theater lighting for years. Many lighting designers claim James Turrell is one of their inspirations. You're working with color in such a way that I could see a lighting designer using it in a very similar, precise method. Totally different medium, right? Interesting how one type of art can kind of reflect the other in different interesting ways. Favorite men's haircut?
Not cutting hair.
Just let it flow.
Well, I mean, as you like this right here, one day I'll get tired of the curls, so then I'll just take my clippers and.
Well, because I've seen you totally shaved with a goatee, and I think at one point you had the
probably pretty significant sideburns with a goatee, or
with a goatee.
no goatee.
I think you had a mohawk at one point, like a pretty good one.
If I did, it might have just been for a day for fun.
For fun, yes.
Every time I shave my head, almost every time that I do it, I will leave myself a mohawk. I think like I'm closeted punk rocker, but I don't have the confidence to really be
to rock it. Yeah. It's a look.
Yeah. I've always admired. I like a lot of punk music.
Yes.
But it's a little bit too much reckless abandon and self-confidence that I don't even possess.
To be able to do all different kind of hairstyles with it is amazing.
One of my students got her Girl Scout Gold Award this year, and I was her advisor. She did it in computer science, and she invited me to the ceremony. One of the local politicians there I've gotten to know over the years, and her, not chief of staff, but whatever it would be for this level. He was a young guy, probably in his mid to late 20s. I was talking with her, and then all of a sudden he was, "You have fantastic hair."
You do. I mean, it's exactly the same as 1998. So on your current show, congratulations on your Firefly piece being selected for the 1 Mile Gallery's TASMA exhibit in Kingston, New York. That's on the Hudson. Tell us more about the Firefly piece and the show itself. How did you get involved with it?
So Firefly is also a pegboard painting. It doesn't have any text, which I just, over the last 2 years, gotten more comfortable working purely with representational imagery again. It's a shaped piece, which is something that started to happen with the paintings that I've been making. Squares with a series of flower paintings I had done, shifted to rhombuses with some insects. So there was a garden tiger moth, a bee, and a ladybug that I painted. So shifting those squares to diagonals, and rhombuses just seemed to give them more life or energy, which I thought was appropriate for them being insects. My younger son has been on an important spiritual journey the last couple of years. Firefly is also in a cross shape.
Yes.
Which very directly and quite consciously comes from being in the churches. I had mentioned before, like ancient art. I always loved medieval art. Firefly lent itself well compositionally to be a cross with the wings spread, but also the aspect of the glowing abdomen, and thinking of that too, almost like a halo, and this idea of light with spirituality. So there's a lot of that that's going into it. It's a personally meaningful piece to me in thinking about my son and my relationship with him as well. So the fact that it was chosen by them was really special for me. It was just an open call. I don't enter a lot of open calls, but the fact that it was in Kingston and on the Hudson appealed to me. Starting to establish some type of a connection up there would be really special.
It's beautiful up there. Still close enough to the city. Super artsy, obviously. I think a little different than Long Island culturally, and beautiful if nature is what is inspiring.
Like I said, I like all cities. Those upstate New York cities that are on the Hudson. Nothing like New York and its grandeur. Just as long as you have one good pizza place, a Mexican restaurant to go to, an ice cream shop, maybe Japanese. My culinary needs are met, and having some galleries close by while also having proximity to nature. That to me is just retirement dreams. We'll see if it happens.
If that's what you want to do, I'm sure it will. Tell us more about your work with the Long Island Children's Museum and other museums in the tri-state area and beyond.
Long Island Children's Museum first came about because one of my students' mothers worked there as part of programming. We had gotten to know each other, and then she shared my work with one of the artistic directors for exhibitions. I had one of my dot-to-dot exhibitions there. It was probably 5 or 6 years later, they contacted me again. They were applying for a grant to get these Andy Warhol prints and to do a residency. Those are the ones behind me. They're inspired by Andy Warhol self-portraits. The blocks there actually say Brillo. Those are inspired by his Brillo boxes. Brillo is 6 letters. And then I just put one letter on each face of the cube and stack them up, and it's in the color schemes. The director had asked if I could be a part of the application process and writing for the grant. For me, it was awesome because I now had an excuse to make art that I knew was going to be part of an exhibition and seen. And one of the things that you can struggle with is, I keep making these objects that me and my family see and stay on my walls or take up physical space in my house. When they accumulate too much, you're like, why am I doing this? This was very exciting knowing that it was going to have an audience. It definitely spurred my creativity. You mentioned earlier, having those deadlines helped. Knowing that you're working towards something is definitely motivation. That was just a wonderful experience.
Do you take commissions if someone were to offer you to, be part of another show or launch some of your work in their own place, studio, office, whatever? Is that something
commissions for me can be challenging. It would really have to be a collaborative process. It's hard if they just say, Keith, would you paint this for me? Then I don't have as much of a connection to that. If we started to talk about, a range of possibilities, and if it was a back and forth, and if it also had possibly the escape route if nothing's clicking for me. Because as much as like they're text and they're kind of sign-like, I have trouble just being a sign painter, even though a lot of my ideas have come about in that way. It's a complicated thing. Could be perfect, could not be perfect.
I think what you're describing is you require authenticity in everything that you do. It has to be something that's meaningful.
Not opposed to it. It's just not easy for me.
Is it easy for anyone as an artist to take somebody else's idea and make it in their own style and legit? I
think for some people it is. At the end of the day, all artists are craftspeople. Some people are just more comfortable doing it or have to do that. If your options are working behind a desk in a cubicle and that's going to make you miserable, or make paintings or other art that might not satisfy your spirit, but helps you pay the bills and keep doing that, then like that,
why not?
I think because I do teach and that has its own skill set and requires its own energy, I've given so much time and passion to that too, that then I don't necessarily want to compromise things then on the painting end. Painting the walls in my house, I hate doing it, but I also hate paying other people to do it because I'm fully capable. It's paint on a brush going on a flat surface. Making artwork is a different
It's a different expression. So your exhibitions are many. You've been showing work since 1998. Every artist's dream. What keeps you going? What would you do if you couldn't paint?
I would just run. I really love running right now, sometimes even more so than painting. There are times if I'm preparing for a race, I'll be like, if I put this many hours into my painting, maybe I would have realized my painting dreams and goals. One thing I like about running is that when the run is over, it's gone and it doesn't take up any space. And then the painting can sit there and remind you that it's not finished yet, or it's not quite what you wanted to do, or it hasn't sold, or it hasn't been shown. That's the downside to the painting. And running has things you can measure it by. I ran
Right.
faster. That makes me feel good. It is a little bit more immediate, say, than some of the painting.
For me, I think running is an activity that just boosts creativity. I can work creative problems out in my mind while running without thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's why I like it.
Do
Personally,
you listen to books on tape when you run?
I usually listen to very loud music and I think about nothing. Do you listen to books on tape while running?
So I tried it. Again, it was like,
Okay. I
if
love
you're
the
going on a
idea, especially if you're on the
3-hour run,
road.
I could learn something new, but then 15 minutes, I'd be like, I have no idea what was just covered in this
I
book. I
agree.
can't concentrate on it. Like you mentioned, you kind of get out of yourself. You can let your mind wander. You can think very constructively. I'll work throughout problems. I'll have questions and dialogues in my head. Sometimes I'll think about absolutely nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
my preference is music
Mm-hmm.
because I have no problem if I tune it out. I'm not going to
Really.
go home and get a quiz. What songs did you hear while you're like, I have no idea.
I have no idea.
Yeah. I've tried books on tape because I think it would be a productive use of the time, but it doesn't work well.
Let's talk about the Heckscher Museum at the Long Island Biennial from 3 years ago, right?
So that right there, the Long Island Biennial, it's at the Heckscher Museum, which is in Huntington. Every 2 years, they have this exhibition, and I had made some new work. I was excited to apply for it, and even more thrilled when they accepted 2 of my paintings to be included in that show. They happened to be 2 COVID-related paintings that I made. COVID was great for me in terms of painting, especially when the schools first closed. There were 2 weeks when we did nothing
Mm-hmm.
as we were just trying to figure stuff out. After that, we were just trying to maintain contact with the students. I essentially had open studio where I was logged in. My students knew they could drop in. I would be at my kitchen table with my stuff, and I was documenting my work and also sharing it with my students through Google Classroom, showing them the
Mm-hmm.
sketches, the development of it. I had a lot of time to paint, and everything was COVID, COVID, COVID. I started to create these graphic type images based on the illustrations, the molecules, or
Of the
the
virus
of the
itself.
virus, very pattern quilt, Pennsylvania Dutch hex like symbol, very geometric portrayals, and layered over that is a type of text. The colors came from things I was seeing. The text came from different articles. As the virus changed, whether it would be a name like Omicron or Scrabble virus, I would create different layers of text with the images. The first one was social distancing, and the second one was isolated painting. So
So
both
you
of those got accepted. It was exciting for me because I hadn't shown in a while. These were new pieces. They invited me to be a guest lecturer on Superintendent's Conference Day. I went there and I did 2 workshops for Long Island art educators in the museum setting. It started just with a 10 to 15-minute slideshow of my work and talking about its development and progression. Then I got to give the art teachers an assignment and interact with them and talk with them. It was a wonderful day, and professionally felt very satisfying as well.
Here you are as the teacher of all the art teachers, and amazing way to bring your work to life.
It was fun. Next year, fingers crossed, maybe I'll be in there again.
I wouldn't be surprised. So, speaking of mentorship,
Yeah.
because you've been a mentor for so many people, did you study under any mentors, or do you have inspiration from any other artists that you want to share or shout out?
I mentioned Rosalie Goldberg before, who was an art
From
history
NYU.
professor.
Yes.
And again, getting me to be not just an observer of art, but writing about things very critically. And the diversity of things that I had to see wasn't just catered towards my likes. That was extremely important and influential. When I was at Vermont Studio Center, there was a sculptor, Tom Butter, whose work nothing really in common with. I can't pinpoint anything that he necessarily said that had an impact on my
Hmm.
work. But Tom would come in and do studio visits and just had this booming voice that I loved so much. And you knew when Tom was in the building. I always loved it when Tom came into my room for a critique. I felt that he was honest and passionate, and I had his full attention and he was fully invested. These are things that influenced me as a teacher and the type of teacher I want to be.
Yes.
Marking up a student's work with writing to give them feedback.
Hmm.
A crit that's really thoughtful and not generic. Those are things that I loved. There's a painter, Glenn Goldberg, who recently had an MTA mural. He was the first painter that came in where I felt like I was taken very seriously with what I was doing. At that time, I was working with yarn and cardboard. I felt like a fish out of water. I'm up in Vermont. It's mostly landscape painters and still life painters and portrait painters. I'm this 23-year-old kid with cardboard and yarn. And he comes in, and I just remember going like this to his nose, putting his hand on his chin, looking around, and he goes, I get what's going on here.
He
He
got
points
it.
to the skeins of yarn on my table, and he's like, that's your color palette. Then he points to the cardboard and is like, this is your canvas. It felt really good. Somebody gets me. And that was really nice. I love Glenn's paintings.
You said his work is at the MTA now?
He recently did a mural in one of the subway stations. A lot of his paintings are small. To see it at that size is incredible. After I finished in Vermont, I went into his studio and saw him, but we personally lost touch. When I did finally decide to get on the Instagram to share my work and stuff, I was like, oh, let me look up Glenn to see what's going on with him. He's very successful within galleries and teaching, sustaining that career and doing beautiful work.
Let's talk more about your art education background. Is there anything you have learned from being an art educator for 32 years now that you didn't know when you began your journey all those years ago?
A lot of things have been reinforcing in terms of concepts or ideas that I had going into it. I became a teacher because I truly enjoyed school. To go back to another question you asked, like if you weren't painting, what else would you doing? I think forever student would be fun for me. One of my goals as a teacher has always been to try to get my students to like school. Not necessarily as much as I do, but you have your kids who do enjoy learning and they're the easy ones to teach. Then there are the ones who don't like learning. And it's like, can I get them? Can this be the 40 minutes of a child's day where they're like, school isn't awful? That's always been an important part for me and challenge. As I've gotten older, it's a little bit harder for me to see that. When I first started, I was 4 to 8 years older than my students. Culturally, we listened to the same music, watched a lot of the same shows. Then there was a space in between where there was a pretty big gap. Once phones came out, the culture gap was pretty extreme. My students helped to keep me young and aware and in tune with stuff. But I didn't have a lot of new stuff that was on the same levels with them. Then when I had children, that made teaching fun again because I would talk about their development and stuff would happen at home. And I would be like, ooh, let me bring this into the classroom. I want my teenagers to have the wide-eyed enthusiasm for the world that my 2-year-old son has. As my boys got older and they were about the same age as my students. Now I understood my students a little bit better because
Right.
culturally I was a little bit
you're
more
there.
aware because that stuff was in my house. As an educator, I have my values, my history and I try to hold and stay true to those things and still be me, I have to respect the fact that they're different. If I'm not willing to attempt to do that, then I'm not going to be able to meaningfully connect with them the way that I could earlier on. That's something that I just try to remind myself of habitually. And you reaching out and connecting with this helps too, because as I near the end of my career, and I do start to question my relevance today with the importance of newness and freshness. Can this gray-haired guy still have that kind of connection and impact? It helps to remind me that I have played an important role in other people's lives. So thank you for that.
You are so welcome. Thank you for everything, for a lifetime of art, exploration, inclusion, teaching, leading by example, role modeling, sculpture, painting. I could
A lot of
just list them
stuff.
all off. On advice for new artists, there was something you said before. I really am curious because you paint not by line filling in. As someone who's just getting back into painting, I draw and then I fill in.
Okay.
How does one break through? How does one break through and capture feelings on canvas to such a degree that you can just paint without the filling by number or the color by number?
You're still working representationally.
Yes.
I would, rather than going to the pencil, water down your paint a little bit with a thin brush and let yourself do your drafting, the initial thing.
In the medium.
With
and just go with it.
Another thing could just be, rather than having so much structure in a linear way, with a bigger brush, block in areas of color or values. For me, staring at the white canvas or the blank page is one of the biggest barriers. It really is taking that leap because it's that new thing. And whether it's the little doubts that creep in, is it going to be good? Why am I doing this? I could be doing something else. Just getting something on there is an important thing. After that, you can tighten up your strokes as much as you want. You can use the tiniest brush stroke that you want to or need to get your desired result. If you even just start your work with some thin, watered down paint.
Shapes even,
and relaxing a little bit so it's not so precise. You're probably going to have to fix that several times.
Yes.
Whether it's a color change or you discover something else is off at a certain point. So why would that first pencil line be so constricted to that there?
How did you know that I have self-doubts and a blank canvas downstairs sitting on my living room
Because
table?
you're a human being and because you care. This is the thing that's fun about talking and having conversations. You know, you asked me that. I had a painting professor, undergraduate. His name was John Casseri, photorealistic painter. He invited the class to his studio the last day of school, and he opened up a drawer. And it was filled with paintbrushes. It had to be like $1,000 worth of paintbrushes. That's my takeaway from the studio. I'm like, he's just showing off his brushes. This was freshman year of college. I was a dreadful painter. Dreadful.
Really?
He said to me...
In your own opinion, by the way.
No, it was objectively awful. He said to me during the crit, you're going to be a successful artist because you care. That's something that always stuck with me. A lot of times I start my school year, one of my philosophies was TLC, not the cable channel, not the all-female super hip-hop group, but think, look, care. If you can do those things while you're making your art, you're going to make good art. Those were the conceptual ingredients that goes into making successful art.
Think, look, care. Not plan, draft, paint. We're talking about what's happening here, right?
Yeah.
So interesting.
Look might actually be first, but the TLC thing, I think you have to be engaged in your surroundings. And I tell my students, you have limited time, so you have to be strategic about your looking. If you're the third wheel in the friend group, person's driving, other person's in the front seat, you're sitting in the back seat, kind of hoping that somebody might see your head in the rearview mirror. Don't worry about being left out. Use that as a time to just be looking out the window. What might you see that you didn't notice before? If you walk to school, if you always walk on this sidewalk, maybe walk on the other sidewalk,
Wow.
see if you notice something different, and then be thoughtful about those things. Not to the point where you're overthinking, but thought is important. Then finally, genuinely care about those things that you choose to do and follow up on the things that you care about.
Is that the same advice that you would give to anyone looking to break in as an artist?
That is what I would recommend. Other stuff, if you like the Instagram thing, I think we're all learning more that if you're doing things for the likes and that dopamine high, it has its limitations. Not bad, not evil, but you have to evaluate it. It's not a one size fits all. Some people
Exactly.
handle that better than others. That's where that thinking part comes into what role is this playing for me, and use Instagram or other venues of sharing your work in a manner that is, right for you. As far as the actual art making, I think if you stick to something like that, which is more conceptual, that might lead you to better results and some personal happiness than the quest for likes.
And why else do it?
Yeah.
If not for personal results and happiness? Because you can't do anything else. You have to create, right?
You have to
That's
create.
it.
Let yourself paint. Hold on to the things that come most natural. That's valuable. Start with that. Be willing to mess up some things. Yeah.
Mr. Gamache,
Yes.
Keith, do you have any new collections that we can look out for? I know we talked about the Firefly art piece at 1 Mile Gallery's Phantasma exhibit. Any other way to support your work?
I have cut some new masonite.
Okay.
I did a lot of framing this summer and preparing that work for the show and finishing up other pieces. The new ones are going to be about snakes. Nature has to do with my son going off to college, his interest in our natural world, and that's continuing to develop in different ways. So snake forms became interesting to me. I'm also changing my medium as well. Thank you.
I can't wait to see your snake art. And your new medium. Thank you for everything, Mr. Gamache, really, for all that you do every day for the past 32 years. And thank you for imparting so much wisdom and positivity in everything that you do. It really goes a long way.
You're welcome.
I can't wait to see what you do.
I will keep you posted. Jackie.
Have a wonderful day.